We're in this series of heavenly peace, and last week Pastor Seth talked to us about if we want to know K-N-O-W, peace, we need to know Jesus, because that's where peace begins. And this week we're going to look at pursuing peace with others. Now, the last time I was with you, I shared with you, I was very open, that I was putting to death the idol of anger in my life, stemming from when I was in 8th grade and carried into adulthood. And please, if you've ever wondered if God has a sense of humor, let me assure you he does, because now I get to talk about pursuing peace with other people. So I got both sides, and God has made it abundantly clear there's something Tim's going to be working on in 2024, okay? So I hear you, God. Let's move forward a little bit. But this is a season. When we're in this holiday season, it's very natural to have a bunch of emotions, right? That can just happen in any season of life, but particularly around the holidays, we can go through a bunch of emotions, right? Like we're celebrating, we're excited, we have anticipation, there's some curiosity, right? Maybe even romance. There's also like feelings of loss and depression, and the dark is longer, right? And it gets darker earlier, and you feel like, oh, I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit here, and you get mopey, and there's all these emotions that happen throughout this season of our year. And when those emotions happen, it's really easy for us to experience conflict with other people, right? We don't even need all those emotions to experience conflict, but conflict can easily and naturally happen in our world, even to the point where, so like, we're about to get together with a bunch of family probably, like some of us, extended family. I mean, we can talk about family. We don't have to leave our house for conflict, but even if you go to jobs, schools, like just out shopping, like you can experience conflict, right? But let's just deal with kind of family time and just start there. When I was, our family went away for Thanksgiving, and we visited my parents. And while we were visiting, we FaceTimed some extended family that couldn't be there with us. And my kids love their cousins. They love talking to them. And they didn't get to see them this year. And so we FaceTimed them so they can interact. Well, one of my daughters is very sociable. She loves just engaging. I think she FaceTimed 2 days in a row for like 2.5 hours with that family. I couldn't do that. She could, and she did a great job with it. However, there was one comment that she made in this FaceTime where she was just excited. She was excited. She was getting to see them. She was mixing it up, and she made a comment where I was like, that's not okay. Like, you can't say that, especially to another adult. Like, you're a little kid. Like, dude, you can't say that. And so we had to address it later on that night, and she took care of it and apologized and stuff. But it can just happen, right? Even when we're excited, things can happen that create conflict around us. Like, we don't even have to go looking for it. So my parents live in the Tennessee area. They just experienced tornadoes yesterday that wiped out a lot of stuff. 2 pastors at their church lost their homes. They lost power. They're okay. But they weren't looking for that. They were like, hey, weather, let's have some conflict. Like, it just showed up at their front doorstep, right? We don't necessarily always go looking for conflict. It can just show up in our world. I found an article that was the 7 most common family conflicts around the holidays. Let's see how you score out of these 7, okay? I scored high. Like, these things have happened in our family as we've gotten together as extended family. First one is bringing up old arguments or past mistakes. That doesn't happen in your family, does it? Like, right? We all have mistakes that we caused in the family, or like when we were in 7th grade, we did whatever, and like we get to be reminded of it annually, and it's so fun. Like, right? Like, those are the moments that we have where, or you're like, I lost the debate last year, but I'm going to win this year, right? Or maybe finally, your team, your athletic team that you love, finally is doing well, and you're like, oh, I can give it to them this year. I've had to take it every year, right? And you bring up these past arguments and past mistakes. Number 2, disagreements over how kids should be raised. I'm guessing by the groan that's happened, right? Like, we're just like, yeah, okay, yeah, you did raise it. Like, I don't know how you interact with us, but it's like, yeah, sure, you raised us that way. You're correct. You raised us that way. That's why I'm so messed up, and I don't want to do the same thing, right? Like, you could like have that argument and conflict right there. Or you could just be like, yes, you did it that way. We're doing it this way. Like, whatever, right? A different era, however you're presenting it. But this can be a conflict in the holiday season. Number 3, pressure about the future. How many of you seniors are tired of telling what you're going to do after graduation, right? Like, oh, so you're going to go to college? Oh, so you're going to get a job? Like, where are you going to go? Are you going to move somewhere? You like, it's just like, oh, I'm so tired of saying this. What about, hey, you guys have been dating for a while. Are you going to get married? Like, you've had that one? Or you guys have been married for a while. You're going to have some kids? Right? That can come up in conflict where it's just like, please stop asking us. We'll let you know when we're having kids. It could be, hey, you've had that degree for a while. Have you thought about getting a job? Like, that could be one. I don't know. Just depends on the makeup of your family, I guess. The fourth one, which family is getting visited for which holiday, right? Like, you got to figure out, like, whose parents' house, or like, I mean, if you got step families, you're like, you might have like 4 or 5, like, you could have a ton of families you're trying to go visit during all the holiday season, and it can be interesting trying to figure that out and settle the tensions. Like, we're trying to hit everybody, like, right? Thankfully, this is not a thing heavily in my world, because growing up, Thanksgiving was always a big holiday for us. We always had an extended family coming in around Thanksgiving, and with my wife, that was true about Christmas. And so for us, we got married, and it was like, we're going to my parents for Thanksgiving and hers for Christmas. This was easy. So that actually wasn't a thing in my world. Arguments or anxiety over how much to spend on gifts, right? Where you're just like, well, like, they normally get something that's around like $20, so maybe I'll spend 20. Or like, you could have the conflict where you're like, they never buy me anything. Why do I keep buying them a gift? Like, I don't understand. Or they have 5 kids and we have 2, and we spend this, like, we don't spend the same amount of money. Like, right? There's conflicts over just buying people gifts over the holidays. Arguments or hurts feelings over embarrassing past memories, where you have to keep reliving that nickname over and over and over again, or that embarrassing moment, or you were playing a game and you said the wrong answer, and everybody like, hey, let's play this game again, and you get to hear about the embarrassing answer you gave every single year. And then 7th one, parents who want to run their adult children's lives. I'm gonna flip this. Okay, maybe it's just me getting older and being in the middle of the ages. But I'm going to flip it as well, because they didn't add this in, but I think it needs to be added in this one. Children who want their parents to keep running their lives, right? Where it's like, you can be an adult. I'm okay with that. Like, please, be an adult. Like, I don't have to keep running your life. But there's all kinds of situations that can come up in conflict during this season, and frankly, in any season of life. We can have conflict that just shows up on our doorstep. Now, I'm going to give you as much as I can, but I want you to hear this. In like 35 minutes, I can't give you everything you need to know about pursuing peace with other people. And so I always like to give you a resource where if you want to do the deep dive and you want to go further, I want to resource you with something to be able to go further, because I can't go over all the caveats and, well, what about this situation? I can't do all of that in this message, but this book absolutely will. And so if you want to do a deeper dive, it's The Peacemaker by Ken Sande, S-A-N-D-E. The Peacemaker by Ken Sande. He'll help you navigate some of the caveats and situations and unique, like, niche things where it's like, yeah, but this is the conflict and it's weird, and he'll help you navigate that in a deeper level. But where do these conflicts come from? Like, we know conflict shows up on our door, right? Like, you can be late, you finally get back in your lazy chair, your lazy boy, you got your feet up, you finally got the game or movie, maybe a Christmas movie on, you're just like, oh, finally. And then you get that question, did you take that garbage out yet? Take the trash out? Did you wash the dishes yet? And you're just like, oh. Conflict can just show up at our doorstep. We were trying to just be at peace. Conflict showed up, right? Or maybe it's you finally got the bath ready and you're ready to read your book and just get all cozy, and then inevitably that one word that puts anxiety into your heart comes in, Mom? It's amazing how one word that can melt your heart can also bring extreme anxiety into your heart, right? It's like, just leave me alone. I'm good. So where does this conflict come from? Well, James 4:1-2 shares this conflict with us. It says, what is the source of wars and fights among you? What is the source of conflict that you have going on you? Don't they come from your passions that wage war within you? You desire and do not have. Conflict comes from within us, from the passions and desires we have that we don't feel other people are quite meeting to our standard. And conflict arises. And that can be true for somebody else towards us, right? They have desires in them. And it's like, but they're not doing it. And then you feel that conflict where that's what comes out when you're just like, can I just get some peace and quiet, right? You have this desire in you of peace and quiet. Everybody else is just having a good time. Like they're not even really hurting anything, destroying. They're all having fun, but you want peace and quiet, so it comes out of you in conflict, and everybody's like, ooh, right? Like, have you ever had that moment where you even walk into the house and you can just feel it in the air, where you're like, oh, no, what did I walk into? I can feel that there's a problem in here. Like you can just cut that tension where you're almost like, maybe if I just shut the door and drive away, it'll figure itself out. But that's not how peace works. That's not how conflict works. So what do? Hebrews 12:14 says this. Pursue peace. Now, this is the Greek word. Seth talked to you about the Hebrew word last week, shalom, and we're going to see shalom this week. But this is the Greek word in the New Testament, and it's irene. Now, irene shows up in every single New Testament book of the Bible, and in every single epistle that was written, a letter written to somebody else that's in the New Testament, there is a command about peace tied to it. So it is very, very much just as important as shalom. Pursue irene with everyone and holiness. This idea of holiness here is pursue sanctification. Continue to look more and more and more like Jesus every single day. That's the idea behind that. Without it, no one will see the Lord. It makes sense to me that no one would see the Lord if you aren't looking like the Lord. If you are not pursuing peace to look more and more like Jesus, nobody's going to see him. And so, bottom line for today, conflict can happen passively. It just shows up. But peace must be pursued actively. If you actually want peace, you have to actually actively do something about it. Peace does not happen because you just waited for something to take care of itself. Peace happens because you were active to seek it. Whether within yourself or to help other people find peace, you have to actively pursue it. And conflict just shows up, right? It just shows up. You did not necessarily care who called you on the phone, but then you saw the caller ID and you went, ugh, not them, right? You weren't looking for conflict. It just showed up. But if you want peace, you have to interact and have actions that demand something to pursue it. So I want to give you 5 actions to pursue peace with others. 5 actions that you can do to pursue peace with others. These 5 actions are all 5. You can do them. There's no, in none of these 5 can you go, yeah, but they. There's no yeah, but they. It's all you. All 5 of these. Number 1, start with a personal check. If conflicts start within us and the war going on in us for the desires that we want, we have to start with ourselves. We can't start with somebody else, but they aren't doing, nope. Maybe you have a desire that is the wrong desire. Start with yourself. We're going to be in 2 specific passages of Scripture. The first is Matthew 5 and Matthew 7, which is the Sermon on the Mount. It's the most well-known sermon that Jesus preached. Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. We're going to look at several passages in there. And the other is 2 Samuel 20, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But let's look at Matthew 7 first. Verse 3 through 5. Why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but don't notice the beam of wood in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the splinter out of your eye, and look, there's a beam of wood in your eye? Hypocrite. First take the beam of wood out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to take the splinter out of your brother's eye. And these are the words of Jesus. This is him speaking. So he's saying here is like, if you don't have the right eyesight, you can't even actually see the splinter well enough to take it out of your brother's eye. Like maybe your brother has something, like somebody else has something else going on with them that does need to be addressed. Maybe that's true. Check yourself first. Right? You need to check yourself first and make sure that you're assessing things correctly first within you. Do I have a messed up desire? Is the desire I have wrong? It may not be wrong. Okay, it's not wrong. Is the desire I have need to happen right now? Maybe not. Am I addressing this with this other person at the right time? I got the timing wrong. That's on me. Right? There's all kinds of questions that we can be self-aware about before we start addressing it with somebody else. We need to start with us. Because if you experience conflict regularly around you, you have to ask, maybe I'm the conflict. Maybe I'm the problem. Now we're going to get into 2 Samuel 20. Before we actually read any of the verses, I need to give you the backstory before we jump in, because we kind of jump in mid-war. We're like jumping into this hot scene, okay, where things are hot and heavy and happening, and I want to give you the understanding of how we got to this point, all right? So what happened is, when we jump in here, you're going to see that a nation is on the verge of dividing, the nation of Israel. King David is the king right now. It's really at the height of his reign, where the borders have expanded, like he is well established as the king, but his nation is on the verge of dividing because of conflict that happened between one of his sons and one of his daughters. That's where it started. A nation is about to divide over a family issue, but nobody stopped to check themselves first, and so this conflict kept escalating. So this brother commits sin against his sister. Amnon commits sin against Tamar. And Absalom, who's another son of David, does not like it. He gets very angry about it, and he's like, what's my dad going to do about this? He's the king, what's he going to do? And what he finds out is King David's going to do nothing. He's going to sit back and just hope it works itself out. And it doesn't. And Absalom goes, fine, you don't want to do anything? I'll do it. He deserves to die. I'll kill him. And he does. So Absalom kills Amnon. And now Absalom's like, well, my dad might kill me for this. So he takes off. And David, once again, doesn't really do anything. He just kind of sits back and hopes it works itself out. And Absalom feels like he's kind of out there in this weirdness where he's like, does my dad hate me? Is he okay with it? Like, he's not even talking to me. I don't know what he's thinking. And so Joab, the general, he's the main general in David's army. He's like, I got to do something about this. And so what he does is he basically pays a woman to deceive David into reconciling with Absalom. Like, he does it through deceit. He does it through trickery, to the point where David kind of sees through it. It's like, are you trying to deceive me? And he's like, yeah, I am. And David kind of does like the reconciliation. It's one of those things where it's like, you're going to tell your sister sorry, and you're going to tell your brother. It's like one of those things where it's like, sorry. And really, you're like, okay, so this isn't done. And that's basically what happens with David and Absalom. It's like, David's like, oh, yeah, you can stay here and I won't kill you. And Absalom's like, thanks, Dad. Like, there's those kind of things. And so Absalom's like, he starts having thoughts. He starts going, you know what? I think I'm a better king than my dad. I think I would be a better king than my dad. And so he kind of wins over the hearts of a lot of the people. And he overthrows, like he's trying to overthrow his dad. And King David has to leave the city. And then King David's army kind of rallies and they have this battle. And before they go into the battle, David tells Joab, do not kill Absalom. I believe we're going to win. Do not kill Absalom. I want him as my son. And Joab goes, oh, sure, I won't kill him until I get the chance, and then I'm absolutely going to kill him. And he does. And so it escalates again. And here we have this conflict after conflict. And this is chapter after chapter after chapter in 2 Samuel, where you have this conflict, and then somebody escalates it, and then somebody escalates it, and then somebody escalates it. And it just keeps going and going and going. And conflict, and then finally Absalom dies, and you would think, oh, that's the end. Nope. A guy named Sheba kind of says, you know what, I wasn't really with Absalom, but King David, I'm not with you either. And he starts rallying support, and he starts going through the tribes of Israel to rally support to not necessarily overthrow David, but to divide the kingdom, and just said, you can have those 2 tribes, and we'll take these 10 tribes of Israel, and we'll just divide. And Joab rallies another army and goes after Sheba. And that's where we enter into 2 Samuel 20, verse 14. Sheba passed through all the tribes of Israel to Abel of Beth-Maachah. So this is the northernmost city in King David's reign, as far as we can tell. Like, we don't know exactly where it is, but it's one of the northernmost cities during David's reign. It's still in Israel. It's still part of the Promised Land, but it's one of the northernmost cities. We know nothing about this city other than what is said in this passage. That's how much we know. I can tell you that Abel of Beth Makkah means meadow of the house of Makkah, which also doesn't really tell us anything other than that's who lived there, okay? All the Berites came together and followed him, Sheba. Joab's troops came and besieged Sheba and Abel of Beth Makkah. They built a siege ramp against the outer wall of the city. While all the troops with Joab were battering the wall to make it collapse, a wise woman called out from the city. So get this picture, like they find out Sheba's in Abel. And they're like, really, they show up. They realize he's in the city, and Joab just kind of goes, attack! And they start running up to the wall and beating it down. It's just like, the people inside that didn't know anything about this are just like, what is happening right now? And so this wise woman basically jumps on the wall and calls out this. Listen, please tell Joab to come here and let me speak with him. I know who your commander is. Like, I know David, I know his army, I know his general. It's Joab. He's got to be here. When he had come near to her, the woman asked, are you Joab? He said, I am, he replied. Listen to the words of your servant, she said to him. He answered, I'm listening. Here in this moment, like, there is conflict and war, and this wall is getting beat down, and she's just kind of calling out. She's like, listen, hey, where's Joab? Listen. And he shows up. I'm Joab. He goes, and she's like, listen to the words of your servant. She comes in low. She comes in humble, right? She could be, everybody else, chapter after chapter after chapter, has kind of gone like, oh, well, you think that? Well, I'm going to do this. Like, she could have come out there and been like, why are you fighting us? Like, well, we're going to destroy your army. Like, she could have come in that way. Like, she could have been in like, what are you doing? Like, we didn't do anything. Like, she could have come in that way. And yet she comes in and says, I'm your servant. What is it that you want? I will serve you. Second action we need to take. Gently restore. Gently restore. This is the first moment in chapter after chapter where somebody came in and de-escalated the conflict. Chapter after chapter, you have, I'm gonna top you. I'm gonna top you. I'm gonna top you. And she comes in and says, I will serve you. And she de-escalates the conflict. And she does it gently. She doesn't come after him. She does it gently. When others are failing to see how they're contributing to the conflict, we need to come in gentle. James 1:19 says this, my dear brothers and sisters, understand this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. You can be angry. It'll never accomplish God's stuff, ever. Because human anger does not accomplish God's agenda. Are we quick to listen, or are we quick to explain? Are we quick to like, yeah, but you don't get it? Like, are we quick to do those sorts of things, or we're like, I can tell you, the moments that I've had like the most peaceful restoration with people that have conflict with me is when they come in and they're like, hey, Tim, you know how you said that one thing like yesterday or a couple hours ago or whatever it was? I'm like, yeah. He's like, it really hurt. I understand you weren't trying to necessarily be a jerk, but it hurt. And I'm like, oh, man, like, that is not what I wanted. That is not what I was trying to do. And it's a quick reconciliation to the point where there's peace between me and that person immediately. Peace on their side. They want peace with me, and I want peace with them. And there's peace because they came in gentle. Galatians 6:1 says this, brothers and sisters, if someone is overtaken in any wrongdoing, you who are spiritual, restore such a person with a gentle spirit, watching out for yourselves so that you also won't be tempted. This is, let's just face it. When we're kids, like this happened in my house. I have 3 sisters and a brother. This happened in my house where we were coming in like, Mom, he hit me, right? Or she pulled my hair. She turned off my game, or like whatever, right? We love pointing out the faults of other people. And when we get to be adults, it doesn't end. It just changes to adult stuff, right? But we're still telling on everybody, oh, look at them. See, I knew that's who they were. I knew that's who they were. They just proved it. And we come in, and it's not a gentle spirit to restore. It's like, hey, look at them. They're worse than we thought, and I'm better, obviously, because I'm not that bad. And it's not gentle. I can tell you this. We have to have a gentle spirit. Wouldn't we want people to restore us like we restore other people? Like if I came in and just blew people up all the time, and then they started blowing me up, I would be like, man, I don't like this. I want to be gentle because I would love for them to come in gentle. And I know that because the moments that I've had of restoration that have been the best is when they've come in gentle to restore me. So let's move forward in the story. Verse 18, she said, so this is the wise woman. We don't know her name, by the way. I kind of want to call her Irene, just because that's the New Testament Greek word. Like, I kind of want to call her that. But she says, in the past, they used to say, seek counsel in Abel. Now, we don't know if this is true. We have no other record of Abel of Beth-Maachah except what she's saying. But it's in God's word, so I'm going to take her word for it. I don't think she's lying, okay? So let's just assume everything she says about this city is true. She said, in the past, they used to say, seek counsel in Abel. And that's how they settled disputes. They would come to our city to settle disputes. I am one of the shalom. I am one of the peaceful and faithful in Israel. But you're trying to destroy a city that is like a mother in Israel. We view ourselves as a mother to Israel that helps settle disputes and calm everything and be peaceful and that they can experience the shalom. That's who we're known for that as a city. Why would you devour the Lord's inheritance? She's like, we are part of the promised land. We are part of the inheritance that God gave our people. We're part of that. We're not some enemy. We're an ally. We're with you. Why are you trying to conquer us? We are you. Third action. Be identified with God in his glory. See, her focus was Jehovah. I am shalom. In a people of shalom, where you know you can find shalom. Because we represent Jehovah Shalom. That's what she's saying about this city. I'm a person of peace that lives in a city of peace where people know they can come here and find peace. In all reality, she doesn't say this, but I feel like we can go there. She basically says, you know, if you would have just come here chapters and chapters and years ago, you know you could have resolved this conflict here, but you didn't show up here. You just kept perpetuating this conflict to the point where now you're trying to destroy our city of peace. Why are you doing this? Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, says this, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Jesus desires his people to be peacemakers. For they will be called the sons of God. The idea here is that as we provide wholeness and harmony rather than strife and discord, as we work to reconcile with other people and as we work to reconcile others, as we're people of peace, we will be viewed as ambassadors of God. We will be identified with people. It's amazing that when we look more and more like Jesus, people see Jesus. When we look more and more like peace, people see peace. When we look more and more like shalom, people see shalom. When we look more and more like Irene, people see Irene. 1 Corinthians 10:31 is very much focused on the glory of God, and we should be too as peacemakers. 31 through 33 says this, so whether you eat or drink, and I'm going to just add, or reconcile, or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. Our focus should be God's glory, God's fame, God's reputation, not mine. Give no offense to Jews or Greeks or the church of God, just as I also try to please everyone in everything, not seeking my own benefit. Where does conflict start? Right here. Why? Because I want to benefit myself. Paul challenges us. You want the glory of God? Not seeking my own benefit, but the benefit of many, so that they may be saved. Are we living our lives to reconcile and live at peace in such a way that people are finding salvation as a result of it? Because they can't help but go, they are of God. They are of Jehovah Shalom. Moving forward, so here the wise woman calls out and she's like, why are you attacking us? We're part of the Lord's inheritance. I'm a person of peace among a people of peace where you know you can come find peace. And Joab, here's his reaction in verse 20. Joab protested, never! I would never devour or demolish. And I just can imagine like the look on her face where it's like, I mean, our wall is half a wall right now. Like, I would say you are. Like, what his whole point is here, he's like, I didn't come to like conquer you and take you over and like add you to our kingdom or something. That's not why I'm here. That's not the case. There is a man named Sheba, son of Bichri from the hill country of Ephraim, who has rebelled against King David. So remember, she's identified as we are part of this kingdom. We're followers of King David. King David is the anointed one of God. We're following him. We're part of all this thing. Who has rebelled against King David. Deliver this one man, and I will withdraw from the city. So we understand what it takes to be reconciled. He's like, you deliver that one man over, I'll leave. This woman's intense. The woman replied to Joab, watch, his head will be thrown over the wall to you. The woman went to all the people with her wise counsel, and they cut off the head of Sheba, son of Bichri, and threw it to Joab. First instance of football that we know of. So he blew the ram's horn, and they dispersed from the city, each to his own tent. Joab returned to the king in Jerusalem. She found out what it would take to be a city of peace, where people could find peace. She's like, oh, one guy that hates our king? We'll take care of him. I'll be right back. Hey, people. This Sheba guy, he's causing problems in the kingdom, and actually he hates our king. If we take care of this whole thing ends. Yeah, throw the head. Done. It took action, though. They couldn't just sit back and hope that Joab quit attacking. She had to pursue peace actively. So our fourth action is this: go and be reconciled. It takes action to go and be reconciled. If you want to settle accounts, reconciliation has the whole idea of settling accounts. The bank gives you your account and tells you how much is in it and the transaction that have happened, and you look at your checking account side, everything you've kept track of, and you go, oh, that's why this is wrong, and you settle your accounts and you go, I got to correct my areas to make sure it fits this, right? That's the whole idea of reconciliation. And when you settle accounts with other people, you're going, what are the offenses that I have against you or that you have against me? And you're settling the accounts so that they are equal and you are at peace and there's no conflict. That's going and being reconciled. Matthew 5, just a few verses after blessed are the peacemakers, Jesus says this. So if you are offering your gift on the altar and there you remember that your brother or sister has something against you. It's not, if you remember I have something against someone else. No, that's not what it says here. If you know somebody has something against you, they might be wrong. It might be dumb. It might not, like you may know, like I didn't do that. If you know that somebody has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled with your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. If you know somebody has something against you, you need to go reconcile. It takes action. There may have been conflict within that relationship for years because everybody's just hoping it goes away. You have to actively pursue peace if you want to reconcile relationships around us so that we can experience peace. Maybe like, Tim, that's incredibly hard. And let me be clear, like there may be unsafe situations. You need to be careful with those, all right? Read the book. Like Ken Sandy will help you explain how to handle some of those unsafe situations. But this can be hard. Like I hate conflict. I try to run away from conflict. Like I try to avoid it at all costs. Or every time I try to resolve conflict, like it blows up even worse because I come in so, a bull in a china shop where I'm just like destroying everything, and I come in so angry and hot, like I'm fighting, so it's the whole fight and flight thing, right? Come in gently with the purpose to restore and be reconciled. Why should we go through this difficulty? This is hard. This is hard. I don't like conflict. I don't like pursuing conflict. I don't like having difficult conversations. I don't. So if that's you, it's me too. So why should we lean in and do these difficult things? Because peace is worth it. And if we're going to look like Jesus, we have to do what he was willing to do. And we see what he was willing to do in Romans 5. But God proves his own love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. How much more then, since we have now been justified by his blood, will we be saved through him from wrath? For if while we were enemies, this wasn't light. This wasn't just like, well, yeah, I did something wrong, but it's not that big a deal. We were enemies of God. We were the enemy. And we were reconciled to God through the death of his son. Jesus wanted to reconcile our accounts so desperately, he gave up his life. He wanted to reconcile our accounts so desperately, he shed his blood on the cross for us. Completely for the benefit of others so that we could experience salvation. Then how much more, having been reconciled, we've been reconciled, we will be saved by his life. A few verses before this, therefore, since we have been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. We've been given peace because Jesus is a God of peace. And he wants a people of peace so that others can experience peace. Romans 12:18 says this, and I appreciate the Apostle Paul so much for putting all the caveats on this verse. If possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone, every single person. Fifth action we can take, own 100% of what depends on you. You don't get to dismiss any part of you when it comes to peace, when it comes to reconciliation, when it comes to pursuing peace with others. You have to own every bit that's you. I have to own every bit that's me. I can go try to reconcile and they can want nothing to do with it, but I tried. I owned my part. I tried. I tried to do it gently. I tried to restore. I tried to do everything that I could. I checked myself. I tried to make sure that how I did it, I would want them to do with me. I did all of that. I did my best with it. Own 100% of what depends on you. Jesus owned 100% of what depended on him, and it was him giving up his life on the cross, and he did it willingly. I think we can do our part as well. Because I can tell you this, I want to be a person of peace in a church of peace where people find peace. And salvation is brought to so many. It starts with us, and we have to own it. We have to do some self-reflection and self-awareness. But I think it's worth it. I think the salvation of people that we love that don't yet know Jesus, I think it's worth it. Would you pray with me? Jesus, thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for giving your life. Thank you for shedding your blood to settle my account. You went to great lengths that I could experience peace. Give me wisdom on how to pursue peace with others so that they too can experience your peace. God, I pray for our church. I know there's difficult situations, whether it's with people or illness or just navigating difficult seasons of life, and conflict just showed up at their door. And I pray that they would own everything that they can to experience peace with you and allow others to experience peace. God, you are reviving my heart. You are reviving our church's heart. You are awakening souls in our midst. I pray as that happened, we would continue to experience your peace, that more and more could come to know you and know that they can have peace with you. We love you, Jesus. Thank you so much. Amen.